a guy into, well, let's see. Now it says I'm ready. So 3, 2, and 1, in case I got to cut out the beginning. Now it says that we're live, brother. Hey, everybody, it's Kip with DT4 EMS, and I finally got a chance to talk to Anthony Turner and have him share some thoughts on, how they're doing with the program, what he thought before the class, what he thought during the class, and then his experiences since. The reason I felt it was important to introduce you to Anthony was that if you didn't know any better, you'd think we're the same person. Of all of the instructor classes I've done ever across the entire country and all the people I've met, he is the one that presents identical to me. If you have been to one of my classes where I'm the one teaching, you know that I'm very animated. It is almost exhausting. It is exhausting to me, but sometimes it's even for the people because of the energy that we throw out into the crowd and feed off of them. And when I was in New Jersey with Anthony and his team, it was like when he was presenting during the trainer portion, I'm sitting back in the room going, "Oh my God, that's me, that's me!" And heck, he's even better at my stuff than I am. So without further ado, I'm just going to have Anthony introduce himself and talk about how long he's been in EMS and what got him started, that type of thing, and his thoughts prior to what he thought, during the class, and then now what he thinks now. So here's Anthony.
Hey everyone, I'm Anthony. I'm a EMS supervisor at Jersey City Medical Center EMS in New Jersey. We're a very, very busy 911 service system. We handle like 105,000 calls a year, 21 square mile city. I've been in EMS for, will now make 7 years in July. Originally got my EMS certification with no intention to use it. I got it as a backup. I was doing a corporate security management at a major retailer in Lower Manhattan. And then as I moved up in the ranks within the retail organization, I was confined to an office, and I'm not an office guy. So I got bored. I figured that, you know what, this isn't for me. I don't feel like I'm making a difference. I'm lining someone else's pockets with what I do. So I left that, took a huge pay cut. Nobody gets into EMS for the money. We all know that. Took a huge pay cut and came over to EMS. And I've been in EMS since. There's no greater job in the world. So before DT for EMS, I'm not the guy like you guys that are like, hey, I'm all for this. I was the exact opposite. I was mandated to take the class by my assistant director. At the time, I was a field training officer and it was required. So I didn't have an option. I had to sit there because I had to sit there. So coming into the class, it's a defensive tactics class. I had my own reservations regarding it. And as we began the class, especially the first practical portion, as you guys know, when we learned the sidestep, that was it for me. That's when I closed the doors on the class. I'm an amateur boxer. I'm undefeated. I fight very well. And when I'm learning the sidestep, I'm like, this is what we're being taught. Are you kidding me? This is going to get me killed out there. I'm not doing this on the streets of Jersey City. Our murder rate is crazy right now. But then I sat there and I started to listen to the message of what the class was. And it was just like going through EMT school again, the sidestep, the parry, everything being piece by piece. You don't walk into EMT school or walk into paramedic school and the first thing that you learn is, a surgical crike or, how to ventilate somebody. It's piece by piece. And as the course started to piece together, it really started to make sense to me. And what really had my buy-in with the course, when I really just sat down, I dropped all the reservations, was after the wrist technique that I was so privy to learn from Kip in front of the class, so humbled in front of my peers. But right after that is when the message of the firefighters being shot during the course, hearing that audio was the first time that I heard that audio. I knew the story. I heard about it. I got friends that are firemen, both career and volunteer, but I never heard the audio. And hearing the way that was put together and watching the video was so well presented. And watching that, I sat back and I'm like, you know what? We really are a target. This is not, this is not 30, 40 years ago where, no one would ever think about harming an EMS provider, or, we never thought that this could happen to us. Like, this does happen to us. And, we've been driving that message ever since. And once I dropped my reservations, put my pride back in my pocket after the one-hand wrist grab, and I sat there and I listened to the course. That was it for me. And it's been just about changing the culture and spreading the message to the rest of us ever since.
And with you have to agree that you guys had a great group and of people, but something just came to mind. And did you not have at the end of the program, you guys had someone? Sorry, I'm trying to signal my son. Go ahead and take her upstairs because our German Shepherd won't be silent enough for it to not switch back and forth. But there was a moment where someone in the class, I don't remember who it was, but they were like, yeah, I didn't even like that guy. You know, I've seen him. I didn't know who it was. But now we're cool. You know, I don't remember. Do you remember that incident in the class? It was two different people. They're like, well, I know this dude and I've seen him before, but I didn't like him or whatever. But now they train together. They were like, huh. And then there was another mention of like some people in traffic, and it was like just happenstance. And one looks over at the other who's continuing on to the instructor class where one had already just finished the last 2 days. And they're kind of like, hey, what are you doing? And showing double tap. And the other one's like, yeah, that's where I'm going. Do you remember those incidents?
Absolutely. It was the bond that we developed, and the way that we open the class. Whenever I open up a class, it's actually my favorite portion of the course. And I tell the students and my peers, we work next to each other. We sit in a box, not more than 6 inches away from each other for 12 hours a day, sometimes 16 hours. And it's amazing how you don't know who you're sitting next to. And my favorite portion of the class is actually getting to know my peers, because I ask them to tell me something about you that we don't know. And it's surprising how, just into the lives of people and what brought them into EMS and the struggles that we've been through. Within our organization, we have individuals who lived in Africa, in South Africa. They got into EMS because they watched a woman burned alive in a village that they were at. We also have individuals who've been drug-free for 25 years, and after kicking the addiction because of an intervention of an EMS provider somewhere within the state is what motivated them to get into it. And then we have people in our organization who became instructors because they were victims of violence on the job themselves and never reported it. And that was like the pinnacle of the eye opener for me, because I sat next to this individual. He actually trained on my unit for about 2 weeks. And I had absolutely no idea. This is one of the most humble, the quietest guys you will ever see. This is the guy who gives you his shirt off his back, the pants off his legs, and will tie your shoelace in the process for you during a snowstorm. He's that kind of guy. And for the first thing I thought was, who want to hurt this guy? We all say, who would want to hurt EMS? But really, who would want to hurt this guy? Like this, that's like, trying to stab Santa Claus. Like who does that? And when he revealed to us that he himself was a victim of violence in the workplace, violence in medicine, and being assaulted on the job, he was actually knocked unconscious. That for us was huge. And we close out that session every class. He's the last person to introduce himself. And we close out that session every class with his introduction and his story, because it takes us right into why this is so important. And no one in the department knows that about him until you sit there and you listen to his story. And it's amazing, because this is one of those guys that you never think that anyone would want to harm, because he's such a good guy. This is someone who was born for healthcare. So it hits home for us a lot.
See him, but it does. His is one of those ones that. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut it off. I was just trying to show you that the goosebumps are up again, and because that's it's personal to us when it becomes very personal, because you've been that victim and you're trying to stop someone else from being it. But what always sticks out of my brain as he was telling the group, because that was like day 4. Remember, it wasn't something, obviously, because remember, we proved that nobody likes to talk about this subject. And we say all across the country, we're like, listen, guys, stuff is going on and nobody's talking about it. And we're trying to tell you this is bad. Now, granted, not everybody is attacked as severely as he was, but it's the moments after the assault are sometimes worse than the attack or assault itself. Because remember, that was when almost, here's a room full of alphas, and almost everybody in that room was almost at tears as he began to describe the fact that, he had no short-term memory now. And he was looking at his wife going, here I am, a nurse, and I can't even remember my job. Are we going to lose everything because of this? And it's ironic that he makes the mention and says that the reason he went on to get his RN, started working in the hospital, was because he started thinking that the streets were too dangerous, but yet he was attacked in the ICU. Yeah. And so it's like, and that's why I want to grab people sometimes and shake them. And I'm sure you're starting to really see that when it's outside, because if if we don't get them in that first little bit of the program to chip away at the fake armor that they've built up, you know, you can't even get them to begin to listen. They just go, well, I'll whack them in the head with an O2 bottle, or I don't need this and it'll never happen to me. And you go, because they refuse. It's easy enough for them to turn the channel, to turn their head, to scroll past something, to go, it's not going to happen to me. And it became real to me again when just last week I was speaking in front of a bunch of risk managers and insurers about violence in healthcare. So it's the big, conference for that. And when I was showing some of the videos and images of healthcare providers being attacked, I could watch throughout the room and people were doing this. They would look away because why? They don't have to accept that reality. Why? Because that's not a person at this moment. That's a statistic. It's a number. And as long as we can assign that person a number and we don't have to face them face to face, it's easier to discredit or to say that's not the truth. If everywhere we go across the country, we get 80 to 100% of a room to raise their hand and admit the fact they've been criminally assaulted on the job, but only 2 to 3% ever really reported it, you would not have believed it the same. It was like you just said, until he said it, man, all of a sudden this closure comes in where your brain goes, wait a minute, I like this guy, and that happened to him and he's been my friend and we've hung out together and whatever, but nobody told us that happened. And that's the part that I'm so thankful that you're, sharing today, because first of all, I'm not from Jersey City. I've never even worked anything that could even be considered remotely close to what your people deal with. However, our message is universal, and so you said at first you didn't really think it was going to be worth anything, and then you took the class, you started getting some real buy-in, and then you started hearing things that we had discussed throughout the program become revealed, not only through the program, but have you seen a lot of this stuff now since you've been teaching yourself? I mean, how has it been for you and the other team members to try rolling it out to folks in a place like where you're at?
Well, we're neighbors to the city of New York, and recently we lost an FDNY EMT. She was murdered on the job, and a part of our course where we speak about being compelled to act and the scene being safe and so on and so forth, it really hit home for a lot of the individuals there, because that's a very the case right now is a very high profile case. So the fact that that took place not more than, I think, across the Hudson River from Jersey City to New Jersey is about a 2-mile difference. That took place not more than 2 miles from us, and that was a mother of 5. And when we spoke about that briefly in our class, you can see the face changes in the classroom just as that was mentioned, and that for our providers was a huge eye opener. As look, this can go from the fact that an intoxicated person takes a swing at you to someone steals your ambulance and kills you in broad daylight. And you don't go home at the end of the day. And I think to some of our people, complacency has set in EMS because they don't see our job as this is just as dangerous as the police or just as dangerous as the fire department. Our job is equally as dangerous as the police or the fire department. At being a true third service. So excuse me, when we briefly spoke about that, the room, the dynamic changed, and that's when people. It was real for them, because everyone on this side and everyone in the Northeast knows that case. And for me, personally, I attended the services for that fallen provider, and standing there watching that ambulance drive by. The thing that I really pushed towards my students at that point was that could have been any one of us. That wasn't, she wasn't on an unsafe scene. She was responding to a job. And someone said, hey, there's someone standing on the back of your ambulance. So anyone watching this video, ask yourself what you would do at that point. If somebody tells you, hey, on the back of their rig, there's a guy standing on the back of your rig, what are you going to do? You're going to pull over, you're going to get out, and you're going to go see what happened. And from there, the rest of the story is pretty much history. So it's amazing watching, while I was teaching my last class, someone else revealed that within that same week, they were assaulted on the job on a night shift and didn't report. And I said, I didn't get a report for this. I didn't see any incident report. It wasn't reported. They didn't think of it being a big deal. And this assault bordered a borderline sexual assault at this point in the back of the ambulance, and they didn't think about anything to report it. They thought it was, again, just part of the job. This is what happens to us. And it wasn't until they sat and took our class that this person came forward, spoke to me after the class and said, hey, I want to follow up with this. This wasn't supposed to happen to me. I wish I had taken your class a week ago, and I would have known that.
And isn't it interesting that if you go back even just say on, social media that we've been, sharing for quite some time, of all the different ambulance thefts and or carjackings that have actually occurred, and some people that are watching this right now will have no idea that that's what turned this into a passion, was while I was in the back of the truck working with that little old lady, my ambulance was violently carjacked by a third person. And so not everybody knows that, but that's what drove the passion for me to research it. And then I started finding that people's stories were way worse than mine. And then I thought, oh my goodness. But just like you said, it's the whole culture change of thinking. And 20 years into it, I now realize it's not going to be changed in my lifetime. But what difference does one life make? If it is one life, and of course we never blame a provider for anything that they did that was, human nature or a reaction or what have you. But in the moment, if we could have had someone to say, whoa, and back away for a second, does that not make all the difference in the world? Just a moment in time. And I keep trying to get people to go, listen, man, it's all about one moment in time. And the amount of sexual assaults that go on, and the whether it be pre-hospital or in hospital, where providers are told, well, no, you just got to accept that because they're a patient. And we go, I mean, we're not talking about someone just patting your hiney that's a 99-year-old man in a wheelchair. We're talking about someone that's grabbing a nurse, a female EMT, a female medic by the throat, pinning them up against the wall, sticking their hand down the front of their pants and sexually assaulting them, telling them to rape them or all this other stuff. And these people are told it's part of the job. But, so we were visiting just before this, we clicked the record button, and you were kind of telling me about some amazing things that you're seeing in presenting the program, meaning, you were telling me about people that are going, I don't want to take that crap. But in that way, our first 4 hours is built is because we know people are going to be doing this. Mm-hmm. But then, so what happens as you get those hard-nosed people coming in to class now when you're teaching?
That's interesting. I in my last class, there's an individual that works at our agency, veteran paramedic, pretty well respected. And prior to the course, he came up to me and he tells me he doesn't believe in the course. He thinks that it's pointless, that we have to take it. He's never been a victim of violence. He believes that, just by the way that he talks to people, that these things are not going to happen. I'm going to sit through the class because I have to, but I'm not going to participate in anything else. This doesn't apply to me. And the one thing that the cadre at Jersey City Medical Center EMS for DTMS do is we don't defend the program outside of the classroom. We don't say anything about the program outside of the classroom. I'm not trying to convince you. That's not the time for it. Sit and take the class like I did. And that the reason that we do that is had yourself or my assistant director or anyone try to convince me, hey, Anthony, take this class. We know that you can fight, but take this class. You lose more buy-in from me at that point. Like, why are you trying to sell this to me so hard? And when this individual sat through our class, and the funny thing is, I've had my run-ins with this paramedic. As I mentioned, I'm a supervisor there, so I've had them hold him accountable a couple of times. So we're not best buds, for lack of a better word, at all. Usually we don't speak to each other while we're on the street or while we're working. We'll talk when it's relevant to patient care, and other than that, you go your way, I'll go my way. I'll see you on the next job. But while we took this class, it was such an absolute pleasure to have this individual in my class. He contributed so much. He brought so much enthusiasm and so much energy to the program. And while we were taking that class, as I said, this is a veteran paramedic, so people follow that type of aura. People follow that type of energy. So what he did was he increased the energy and the enthusiasm of the room while he was in that class. And this is someone who said, hey, I'm not taking this class, to showing up a half an hour early on day 2, ready to go. This is someone who said, hey, I'm not going to participate in any practicals, but he was willing to move down the line before we called for the switch to work with other people to help them on their double tap. And at the end of the class, he shook my hand and said, hey, we need this stuff. Let's start pushing this at our in-services, at our organization quarterly. We have department-wide meetings where we, discuss continuing education, new innovations that are coming out in the hospital and within the department. And this is someone who said he's going to be a huge proponent of pushing DT for EMS refresher training at our in-services going forward, because it hit home for him. And he actually sat there and he realized we do need this, and it can happen to me. So that, if anything that I've done in DT for EMS means anything, it was that day, because I was that guy. I was him. I don't need this. I'm a fighter. I've never lost a fight before. I know how to talk to people. What are you going to tell me, especially a guy coming from the Midwest? What are you going to tell me about working on the streets of Jersey City? There's nothing that you can tell me. I don't want to hear it. I'm here because I have to be here so I don't get fired. That's it. And then it changed me. And it was the same thing. I had to experience that same type of conflict in the beginning. And when he finally realized this individual has not stopped talking about our program for the last 2 weeks, and I've not actually now have to increase the frequency of our classes because I got too many people trying to sign up for one class because of that guy. So all it takes is one person to change the culture.
You and I mean, so then there's proof, and a lot of times I can see it in the first part of, like, so say during the, the train the trainer is 3 days, and during that first part of day 3, when we reveal why we do what we do, I start to see the instructors kind of go, well, why in the world do I have to spoon feed people? Why do I have to, work around this thing? And man, whether they got the attitude or not, they need this message. And so you can see it while they're not saying it. That's what their body language is saying. And then I keep reiterating, this is why. This is why. Your very example, man, of you experiencing it. And then now that you saw someone, because again, what difference does it make if it's one life? So one person that you were able to reach with the culture changing message, it may funnel down to someone who needed it that you've never even met yet. So it is so big that when you make that one person, and again, you never know who that one might be. But that's it, man. You guys are absolutely nailing it, because I'll tell you, it's no secret that I said it when I was up there with you guys, and anybody that caught a couple of the pictures of me with you guys, or even the one that was kind of fuzzy of you're on the stretcher sideways, we're all in the back of the ambulance when I was kidnapped. And I mean, just all this crazy stuff. And it's like, it was so, if the world could see what we see walking in. So see, you saw now what I saw when I walked into your group. And so you're kind of looking at them, you're going, okay, what's my game plan going to be? Because they don't know they need this. But I also love what you just said about, we don't try to sell the class outside the class. We don't try to sell it. And I love that idea because when you're there, you don't have to defend me. But I sure as heck appreciate it when, you come on here now after you not only didn't want to take the class to begin with, then you took it, enjoyed it, then you became a trainer, then start to see all the things working that we told you would work if we, ask you to present it away, and you do it that way. And then now you're making a difference in someone's life. And that's all we're trying to get out to people, is to go, look, how is it that people that could stomp a mud hole in my behind? And like you said, what's a guy from the Midwest going to tell me about Jersey City streets? Not a darn thing. I can't. But I sure as heck can give you the principles behind a bunch of stuff that you can apply to yours. And now you're doing the same thing to them because, you're a boxer. If I'm going to stand and try to box with you, first of all, I don't have the cardio to be able to keep up with you. I sure as heck don't hit as hard as you. So it would be pretty foolish. And when you get people to think about it like that, they go, well, wait a minute, that makes sense. But it's like you said, man, you don't come in learning a surgical crike first. I mean, first we learn what the oxygen even does, and then this is called a nasal cannula, and then we build from there. And that's what we're trying to do with them, is to reveal their truth to them. And man, I just love it. Your group was so important to me because of how you were when I got there. I mean, you could see it, and it wasn't that not a one of you was trying to be anything other than who you are. And then to see that change, and then meaning that, we say a lot about trying to get people back to where they were when they first started. You know what I mean? That who they were. I'm not asking you to look at the world through rose-colored glasses, but I'm asking you to go back to being who you were, because would you not agree that our people, once indoctrinated into the culture that's on the street, instantly become jaded? Oh, are you still there? Oh, no. Leave it here for just another minute or two and see if you come back in.